So, I know I said I'd probably do some sort of video last time, that day, and upload it that night, but didn't happen mainly because, well, I told you already, I'm new at this sort of thing, and not really well versed in what the hell I'm supposed to do here. So, it took me a little while. Figured it out. Wasn't until midnight. Didn't really feel like trying to get something else to do. And fucked off to bed. um, and I know it's been 4 days. Kind of figured I'd be doing it a little more often, but then again, real life kind of got in the way and was like, no, you're going to do a research paper. And I'm like, well, okay. Didn't know. I mean, you didn't give me the outline. And it's like, yeah, well, whatever. It's I basically had to do it from scratch. Turned it in yesterday. Spent most of yesterday afternoon doing my Dungeons and Dragons since I GM, and now I'm back on doing something, playing my shaman, Cloudzen, the only non-blood elf character that I happen to own, mainly because most of the blood elves don't really facilitate dual wielding, which was the main reason why I played a shaman, because enhancement, dual wielding, fuck yeah. It's just what I like doing. Um, so as for what I'm talking about today, I did a lot of thinking, and during one of my downtimes at the college, we got onto the topic of coming out. Because several of my friends are bi or gay. You gotta admit, it kind of flocks together. Just happens. And things led to another, and we just started sharing what happened when we came out, if we even came out. Because some of us haven't. For instance, one of my closer friends, um, when he came out, it was about 3, 4, 5 years after he'd known he was bi. And I mean, he'd come out to his mother, and when his father found out, basically kicked him out of the house. So, yeah, wasn't really pleasant for him at all. At least now, though, they're starting to get a relationship back, so I'm really happy about that. It takes a lot to go back from something like that, and it says a lot about both their characters. Um, but no, it's this story isn't about him. This story is about me, the narcissistic bastard that I may or may not be. Okay, maybe I'm a little bit narcissistic, but aren't we all? Um, I guess the story begins probably when I was 5. Yeah, 5. I was in kindergarten then. I spent at the time my father was working a lot, and I spent most of my time with my mom. And my mom had her family in town, my maternal grandfather, maternal grandmother, and at the time, her sister, my aunt, lived in Athens, and both of my uncles lived in Dalton as well, the same place I go to college. So we were all fairly close together, so I would go with Mum and get to see my family. Among them was my uncle, who is just a lot derpy. He's we think he might have Asperger's, but that's besides the point. He's very much so the sexual type. Not so much the pervert, so much as it's one of the things he really does think about. And I spent a lot of time with him because let's be honest, I didn't really have that much of a father figure in my life. My father worked all the time, and I don't really think he wanted to have a family to begin with, because he'd work from 7 until 6, and by that point I was already in bed. I mean, other than my Uncle Jan, my Uncle Frank, I had my grandfather. And, yeah, not really anything else. And even then, he and my grandmother were an issue unto themselves there. They were both having failing health, and soon to that time, my grandmother passed away from a stroke. um, and he kind of went downhill from there. It was actually really sad to have to watch that. So I spent a lot of time with my uncle, and like I said, very sexually based. And I grew up with all of this, thinking that it's perfectly all right to be with a woman, man and woman. There we go. That works. It makes perfect sense. Around about a little while after that, I'll be honest with you, I kissed a girl in kindergarten and got in horrible trouble for that one. I actually saw her my senior year for senior pictures, and my mom and her mom were sharing the story, and both of us were completely embarrassed over it. So, mums, even 13 years after the fact, they have the power to embarrass you. Though we all knew this. So I kissed the girl, got in a lot of trouble actually. Nearly got suspended. Um, but eventually they determined that I had ADHD, and that's a talk for another day on all of that. But they diagnosed me with ADHD and put me on Ritalin, and thus began one of the worst parts of my life. Um, I was on Ritalin until fourth grade, which would have been about 3-4 years later. And then I was put on another one called Concerta for 2 years. It was basically a Ritalin knockoff. That well, not so much a knockoff, so much as a condensed version of Ritalin. So you only needed 20 milligrams, is like 40. Um, and then in sixth grade, they put me on Strattera, which Strattera fucked up my stomach something fierce, and basically gave me morning sickness for the rest of my life. Fuck you, Strattera. And I stopped taking the Strattera when I was 14, and I decided to live with my mother. Back in '97, my parents got a divorce, and when I turned 14, I chose to live with my mother. And at the time, we both agreed that I would stop taking the medication because the medication was effectively destroying me. Um, my teachers had noticed it, and they were the ones who actually brought that I should be changing medications. They would describe me as being a zombie of sorts. Quite literally Dawn of the Dead. Um, and that was I would never socialize. I would do my work, pull out a book, and read long before anyone else had finished. And that was basically how it went for as long as I was on the ADHD medication. Um, and once I got off the medication, I didn't have any social skills whatsoever, none whatsoever. Because and anyone who's been on these ADHD medications for such a prolonged amount of time will agree that that's all that they basically put your actual social and your actual self to sleep, and all that's left is basically an automaton. Um, and that really was one of the more terrifying things at the end of it. Um, get the black walnut extract. So, I came out of it at 14, actually more closer to 15 at the time, because my father was so against me living with my mom. He pulled every legal stop in the book he could to prevent it. And that wound up all completely backfiring on him. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. I was actually much better off not living with him. It did a lot for my development. But I came out of it with no social skills. And this was at a time when this was my sophomore year in high school, and everyone else had already gone through the mock girlfriend phase, I suppose you could call it. You know, in middle school, where you say you have a girlfriend or you say you have a boyfriend, and you really don't see each other outside of school. But at that point, developmentally, you've kind of realized you like girls or you like guys. I completely skipped over that part. So I'm off the drugs. I have absolutely no social skills, or very little at best, and terrifying shit. And basically, I had to learn a lot really quick. I was perhaps one of the most awkward teenagers in that school, and it wasn't even puberty. I mean, fuck that. At least I didn't get beaten up the face with the acne stick. Oh, I saw some of those kids. It's some terrifying stuff in there. Um, I'm glad I'm not pockmarked like they are, red blotches all over my face. I got off easy. I should thank my ancestors for such good skin. um, but I found out in my sophomore year, shortly after I got off the medication, that I like the guys. I do in fact think guys are cute, and at the time I wasn't really developmentally enough that I could consider the thought of being in a relationship with them. So it was basically just I never talked about it. It's just I was always very shy. Still am. I don't like talking about myself at all. Okay, maybe this video is kind of contrary to that, but then again, you people are you guys are anonymous. You guys don't fucking know me. If you did, I'd be just a little bit worried, but you don't. So there you go. But I never really talked about it. And at the time I was still, as I said, I still was under the impression from my uncle that I liked girls. I was bombarded by it because he remained in town with my family and my grandmother until she passed away. And well, it was a little while before that because he married before that. And yeah, I couldn't do the group because I want to finish this quest first. Questing is more important at this point. I want to try and get to something else. But no. Okay, we survived the melee. We're good. Fuck you, Dungeon Q, turning at the wrong time. So I was still bombarded by my uncle that I should like girls. So I pretty much assumed that I liked girls. And I liked guys too. And I was alright with that. I was completely alright with the fact that I like girls and guys. I was by, let's go with it. I am who I am. And I kept thinking that. I didn't really have the social skills or the means to have any sort of real relationship during high school. I didn't even really have a friend until my senior year, so if that tells you anything. Yeah, I know it's kind of pathetic, but then again, I was in the advanced classes. I was an outcast, so we didn't really have much solidarity. So whatever. Anyway, so it wasn't until my first year of college that I started thinking about myself. And it was also at that time that I started going to conventions on a regular basis. Now, to those of you who are versed in, well, nerdy topics, if you want to put it so bluntly, conventions are basically places where you gather with like-minded people, comics, gaming, yaoi, yuri, whatever you can really think of there, and you just have a great time. And there's a local convention called Halicon, and I went there for my first time, and it was at Halicon. I was 18, and I met a girl. I met a girl who I really liked. She was cute. She was funny. She was everything I could want in someone. She really was. And I spent the first day of the convention with her. We hung out, had a lot of fun. The second day, did the same thing. But that night, things got a little closer, and I made out with her. And it was at that point that I realized I was gay. Because as I was kissing her, I enjoyed kissing. I enjoyed making out with this girl. Loved it, in fact. But there was no reaction in my pants. Here I was kissing an amazing girl, and I'm feeling nothing. Nothing at all. And that was kind of me realizing to myself that I don't like women. I was gay, and that put an interesting spin on things. Because I spent the last day of the convention, I spent the next couple of months trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Because like I said, I've been bombarded by men and women. This is all right. This is kind of what you should do. I mean, I kind of been getting away from that when I assumed I was bi. And I basically came to the conclusion around Christmas of that year, I'm gay. There's nothing to be done about it. I don't like women. I want nothing to do with women sexually. And that's the end of it. There's not much I can really do. And I kept this revelation to myself for another year. And the first person I came out to, was my stepsister. And as I mentioned before, my parents got divorced. My father remarried. And my stepmother had 2 children. So I sat down with my stepsister, who, at the beginning of the marriage, the two of us didn't really get along, but as we got older, the similarities in our ages really made us converge and start supporting each other, understanding each other a lot more. Enemy. So I sat down in her room, and I came out to her. We talked about it for a while, and I found out that she was bi, so we had something in common there. And she was really supportive. I mean, she kind of had to. Well, not really had to so much as she already was. Her uncle is gay and in a committed relationship, so it kind of came with the territory. It's one of the reasons why I really thought about coming out to her first, because we were already pretty close and she was already accepting of it. So she was the first person I told. And then I told some of my friends. And this is college. It's everybody understands each other. We really are a very liberal group as a whole. Even if you consider yourself conservative, you're in college. It's just how you go with it. You don't have a problem with it, unless you're crazy. um, my friends were all right with it. Some of them were really supportive, very supportive. Um, and then I got into a relationship with someone, and they convinced me that I needed to tell my mum, who I was still living with at the time, um, free rent. And she said that I had a home as long as I actually was going to college or had a job. So, no big deal there. Um, I mean, who wouldn't save money there? Um, so I basically came out to her, told her, Mom, I'm gay. Um, and she looked at me, and it seemed like she didn't really know what to say. But finally she said, that's all right. And I think at the time she thought it was a phase, and that I thought I was gay. But over the next couple of years, she realized that I am gay, and that it's not a phase. It's not the in thing to do. It's just the truth. And she came to terms with it. Because I really think that after my sister abandoned her as a child, my sister abandoned my mum. That's another story entirely. I think she was counting on me, because effectively I was basically the only son, the only child. And I think she was counting on me to have a family and make her a happy grandmother, because she wasn't going to have a relationship with my sister anymore. And I think that kind of blew that out of the water for her. And I think she's still a bit disappointed at that, because even though she accepts the fact that I'm gay, I think that she doesn't want to give up hope that I'll have a loving family with children that she can spend time with, and spend the time that she wanted me to have with my grandparents that I didn't really get a chance to. So I can understand where she comes from, and I don't fault her for that. I don't usually cry. Oh God. Shortly after that, I came out to my stepmother, and she looked at me and she said, uh, I've known that for a long time. I kind of figured it. And I just looked at her and she's like, my brother's gay. How could I not? And I'm like, yeah. So she's really been a bastion of support over at the times I go back to my father's. I've not told him. I don't think I ever could. He is the stereotypical uptight asshole conservative, and we already have a rocky relationship, and I'm afraid that if I tell him that I'm gay, then any relationship that we'll ever have will be non-existent. We won't actually ever have a relationship. And as much as I dislike him for assorted things, I've forgiven him for a lot of it. And I've gotten over it. I've gotten used to who I am and everything I do. But I don't think he'll ever understand. So at this point, I don't expect to ever tell him. Or if I do, it'll be before he dies, so that I at least have a chance to make some sort of relationship with him and not have to worry about things. Um, so yeah, I already said I lived in Dalton, Georgia. It's not the best place to come out. My friends know. My friends at the college. My stepsister knows. My mother knows. My stepmother knows. Um, I know that my uncle, the one who's sexually advanced, I know he knows. I've told him. And we've had talks about it before. Mainly philosophical. Um, Mostly about how back in the old days I would have been killed because I was gay in the old antebellum South. Oh, come on, I did that right, fucker. Um, but and I think I've told my other uncle. I don't think my aunt knows. All of my grandparents have passed away. So really, the only people who I know for a fact don't know are my sister, my father, my eldest stepsister, and my aunt. And I don't think I'll ever tell them. One, because I hate my aunt. Two, I don't think my dad will ever accept me. And three, my sister's a complete and utter cunt. So I try not to talk to her as much as possible. So that's kind of where I stand on all of that. It's not really been as difficult a ride to actually come out as it is for a lot of people. But to get to that point, I suppose you'd say the framework and the groundwork I had good. It was good there, but the actual journey to actually finding out this fact about myself was a bit more hellish than most. And it didn't help at all that my family, well, my mom is Mormon, so yeah, that's a different can of worms entirely, and that will probably be a video for another day and everything there. So yeah, I will. I'll talk to you guys later. I'll probably make another video tonight, and don't know what it'll be about. Might talk some about the government shutting down, which since that happened recently. Might talk some about the anti-gay legislation and how it is unconstitutional. There's a lot of stuff that can be talked about, and I'll find out when it comes. Just the same as a lot of what I do. So yeah, talk to you guys later.